Hello everyone, welcome to the Babbling Transfer Show with myself and Sloth today. We might have some others joining us as the show goes on. We will let you guys know if anything's going to happen. But fresh off a 4-0 defeat, Sloth, a week left till the Premier League starts. I mean, where do we even start? Let's touch on the game that happened today before we get into the whole transfer situation. 4-0 loss, completely played off the park by Leverkusen. Tim Steidten's team, all of his recruitments were there, absolutely dominating the Premier League, proven talent that we had. And obviously Xabi Alonso as their manager, out-tacticking, outclassing David Moyes on the day. So just your overall thoughts really at the moment. What's going on before we get onto the positive news?
Well, I said to you just now that, I didn't watch it. I'd be lying if I said I watched the whole thing. I was following it quite a lot on my phone. And then when we went 2-0 down, I thought, I'll give it a little watch and I'll see what happens. And the third one went in and I was just like, yeah, no, I'm not putting myself through this. And I went about my normal day. So that was quite nice. But yeah, I was still following it on my phone. And it's a prime example of when you actually have a team that you recruit well for, but also for how you want to play. And it's not just a case of, finding players from nowhere, because that's not what Steidten has done. He has signed from the PSG Academy. These are lots of talents there. And even Tapsoba was really highly thought of in Portugal before he signed. But these players just absolutely dominated us today from what I was understanding and taking in.
You'd be correct. It was domination. It was not even we had a couple of chances here and there, but it was just to sit back and kind of just hope for the best, as we do with Moyes. There was just no patterns and it just looked really lethargic, and it's not what you want to see from a match that's a week away. I know it's just pre-season, the result doesn't matter, but the application does. The intensity does. The ideas that you're trying to create absolutely matter. So it was just a really poor match. And we can take losing. I think that's not a problem in pre-season, but like I mentioned, these kind of things can't be happening a week away. And it kind of highlighted just how much we need to sign and how quickly we need to sign, because like we said, a week away from the Premier League started now.
I think the problem for me as well is that, I kind of mentioned it on my Twitter feed, but Leverkusen do play quite a similar style of play to us, or at least they play how we should be playing in Moyes' head, which is like they play quite quick counter-attacking football and they really utilize their wingers. Obviously, they have just moved DRB on, but they have, they've recruited Boniface, who is now a focal point of their attack. They have Frimpong, these incredibly athletic, pacey players, but they also have those big units at the back, like Tapsoba, who I mentioned. They have those midfield enforcers like Palacios, and they have a wonderful world-class talent in Wirtz, who just lights up the place whenever he plays. He is absolutely unplayable at times, and I do really think that he's probably going to go to either Real Madrid or Man City in the future. He's that good. But these are the sort of players that, we need, those core elements of, big athletic defenders, very pacey wingers or wing backs, and then a big athletic forward. And just time and time again, we don't get these players in. And we look at who we recruit, and then we wonder why things aren't going that well in all competitions. Don't get me wrong. It's, we won a cup last year. However, I do think that when you look at the bigger picture, it is quite worrying just how short we are in those areas, particularly with just a week to go.
I'll tell you what as well, Sloth, the pace was, the pace difference today was incredible. The amount of times we were getting caught out, especially in the first half, by their pace, it was scary. And they were, like you mentioned, they were using, their width really well. So the second half, we actually changed to a back five. And a lot of I think it was the co-commentator on the YouTube stream was kind of saying that we'd defend him really well. We weren't. We were just putting more defenders behind the board, being a little bit more compact. But even then, they were breaking through us. So
From what I heard, it looked like Ogbonna was walking in comparison to a lot of their players. And I know Mike will probably be watching, and me and him have said it time and time again. It's nothing against Ogbonna, but how on earth he's expected to keep up with these European attacks, or even in the Premier League at the moment. You look at some of the players that are coming into the leagues, like Højlund. How we're expecting him to cope, I don't know. It almost feels to me like a wasted squad place.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Let's kind of take a look at some of the comments coming in, because we are going to go on to some positive news that potentially our first signing of the summer could be coming in sooner than we think. And Brandon's given away the name here, Edson Alvarez. But yeah, it's going to be kind of difficult. Ballon Dawson here saying support your club through thick and thin. Absolutely. We will be doing that. Signing good players from Epic Hash Time is not going to make any difference. We'll get onto that very shortly. But again, that's another topic. And yeah, E. Davis saying, imagine what Tim could do with our budget. Well, it seems like the Tim Steidten effect is starting to take a little bit more of emotion. The ball's got rolling a little bit more. Edson Alvarez, let's talk about him. It looks like personal terms were agreed yesterday for him, and it looks like he really wants to join the club, which is really good. And it's likely that maybe in the next couple of days we'll have the kind of fee agreed. We never know what's going to happen with Sullivan. It might go tits up, but hopefully Alvarez will come through soon and we'll get that medical sorted. But he would probably be the big signing in that midfield for now. We've said it before, it's going to take a 6 and an 8 to replace Declan Rice. This is one half of that. And it's actually a player that Moyes identified before Steidten came in. So he deserves a little bit of credit for that as well. But how excited are you by that, Sloth? Moving towards the positives, that Alvarez could be coming in very soon, and maybe even potentially in time for that Bournemouth match.
Oh, well, I think it's a really good signing. Obviously, if you do want to know more about him, we did do an individual video on him, so give that a watch, because we do go a bit more in depth. We bring out all the stat analysis, and Mike is to thank for that again. So he does an excellent job there. In terms of how I'm feeling about the transfer, I think it's a really good transfer. I think he is going to really allow us to play in quite a few different ways. He is so much more comfortable dropping deep, playing that central defensive mold, but also fitting into the centre back line. You know, he will be happy to do that. And I mentioned it in that video, but someone like Aguerd, who is really quick, very comfortable on the ball, carries it and looks for those long passes, he's going to really enjoy that. So he's going to enjoy that freedom that he's given. So for me, it's a fantastic signing. I think the £35 million reported, I think that's a really good deal, to be honest with you. It's also something that should help raise our profile marketing wise. You know, I like to talk about that quite a lot, but particularly in kind of Mexico, but also in the States, I think that's going to be a really good thing to help us grow a bit more. In terms of him, though, you know, a lot of people are talking about how he's not the best on the ball. I think that's just sour grapes from a lot of people, or people who haven't really watched him. Yeah. His only real kind of foible that I can think of is his decision making at times. He does like a lunge. And I think for, 90% of the time, West Ham fans are going to love that, because he's like a pit bull chasing someone down. He's tenacious, he gets stuck in, and he's big, strong, and he will bully players. So West Ham fans really like that, but there is a red card or two in him. So that's the balance.
I think that's what we're trying to get, isn't it? We're trying to get two players that are going to kind of compensate for what Rice could do. And it's actually probably going to make our midfield a lot more balanced in the long term if we get it right. Alvarez is that first piece where we're talking about that anchor, where everyone knows how he's going to be going into tackles. His reading of the game is really, really good. He'll be able to keep us higher up the pitch for longer periods. I think that's a lot of the time. And we'll notice a lot less gaps in our midfield. I mean, today it was ridiculous, the amount of space in that midfield. I mean, it was absolutely laughable. So someone like Alvarez is going to shore that up. Like you mentioned, he can drop into that defence. He can allow Aguerd some space on the ball. He started off as a centre-back himself, and he's gone into that midfield role, similar to what Rice did. So yes, his passing probably isn't, as penetrative as someone like Enzo Fernandez of Chelsea. He's not that type of player, which is why it's important that we get the 8 right as well. And we're going to talk about that very shortly. But yeah, Mike's in the chat. He's all good. Don't worry. He's just had a little one. So again, massive congrats to him and his partner as well. So they're all doing good. But he needs some time away from babbling for a few weeks. So he'll be back on the channel soon. Don't worry. But yeah, I think with Alvarez, it'll be a really good signing for 35 million. I think that's the rumored fee. He very much fits the profile of what Steidten wants. And obviously it's a player Moyes likes as well. So there's that compromise we're finally seeing. The next one is kind of that 8 position. We spoke about it before. It's a player we've absolutely loved. We've done a video on him as well. So go check that out again. Youssouf Fofana of Monaco, absolutely incredible player. Everyone kind of saw him for the first time the other day against Arsenal in the preseason, and people started to kind of catch on to how good this talent could be and how important this signing could be, because you're replacing Souček in that midfield. Then if you've got Alvarez, you've then got that position of Souček to change, and that is massively important for me. Maybe even more important than what we're going to do with the defensive midfield, because how many times we've seen with how we play, Souček has been very, very ineffective, and he's just not what we need anymore. We need to move past Souček. So Youssouf Fofana, would he be your kind of main pick to try and come into that 8 position, maybe the more attainable pick as well?
He's definitely one of them. You all know my top pick for that kind of position. It would be Khéphren Thuram. However, I do think that Fofana is the better deal in terms of how much he'd cost, because we do know he's coming into the final year of his contract. It is going to be a case of him costing less than a player like Thuram would. And, I think if we can get him for around £30 million, it's a fantastic deal, because then you've still got money left over from Rice. You've still got money left over from other deals that are happening. And I think it gives you a really great foundation to build upon. And, I think it's quite easy to scapegoat Souček at times. It's another thing to think about him coming off the bench and for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, just giving 100%, throwing himself at everything. And if we have set pieces, players like him, Alvarez, Zuma, all in the area, ready to go and grab a winner, something like that, it's a very different prospect. But I do think that, we need to move past him as a starter. It's a bit like I've said with Antonio for quite a while. We need to move past him as a starter. But if he is willing to stay as depth, then I think that's a great, it's a great thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind having Souček if he's going to come off the bench and we're maybe chasing a goal and we want to go a bit more direct. But it's just, I mean, E. Davis saying it here, it's kind of a blunt instrument, dulling Paqueta. And I agree with that. I mean, today we saw the prime example of what Paqueta was trying to do in a midfield that was basically existing of just him. Downs tried to put himself about a bit, but again, just ineffective. Souček, again, absent in that midfield. So really, Paqueta was just dropping deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's where he lost the ball for when they scored their first goal. So as much as Paqueta makes mistakes in that middle part of the field, it shouldn't be his responsibility to be going and getting the ball in those positions. We should be able to build up without him. We should be able to be getting him in better positions. So for me, it's really important that he's replaced right. And I think Fofana is that ball carrier. He is that, very strong athletic person that would be able to come into the Premier League absolutely easily and slot in. So, I mean, Ralph, enjoying the sun. Glad you're enjoying the sun. But he says, do you guys honestly think Fofana will come to us? I can't see it, to be honest. So, what do you think?
I mean, look, if you're playing and living in Monaco, that's a hell of a lifestyle, really, isn't it? But he's been very open about the fact that he wants to play in the Premier League. He sees it as the best league in the world, and he wants to test himself there. So he's got a very good attitude. I think if we go in for him now and we move quickly, I think we sign him. I think he wants to come if that's the case. But if someone like Villa or Newcastle went for him, then I think it's a different prospect. I think he'd probably be thinking they've also got European football. Newcastle got Champions League football. Yeah. If they move for him, I think it's a different kettle of fish. But I could see him joining us. I don't think there is obviously a lot of doom and gloom around the club at the moment with the way the summer's gone. But I do think that when you look at us as a whole, the chance to live in London, the size of the stadium, the fact we do have Europa League football, but also, you know, perhaps key, the wages that we can pay, I think it's fair to say that he'd probably join us.
What do you think about this question, Sloth? Because I'm not sure about this one. I'm still thinking about it. But Sam's put in the chat here, we're kind of missing a huge point here. You could sign 6, 7, 8 world-class players, and things still wouldn't change with Moyes in charge of them and setting up with the way we do with our tactics. Do you agree with that? Do you think there's an element of truth to what Sam is saying?
I think if you are Tim Steidten and you're sat there and you're talking to Moyes about how he wants to play, and you're targeting players based upon that, I think you can do it, because as we said, and I said earlier, you know, Leverkusen play in quite a similar way to us, where they look to catch people on the break. They do in the Bundesliga a lot. But you have to have a manager who trusts you to do that. And when you look at the targets that he wants, you know, he's rumoured to be interested in, Gallagher aside, I do think James Ward-Prowse doesn't help you do that in any way, shape or form. Mm-hmm. It's a case of, if you want pace, you need to target pace. And Barnes would have been good for that. He's not the best link-up man in the world, but he would have been good for that. He definitely gives you an engine on the wings. But I just worry, particularly with the fact that we've heard he wouldn't play players that he doesn't have a hand in signing. For me, that's completely unacceptable. If you don't have a hand in signing players and you're just going to throw your toys out the pram and not play them, that's completely unprofessional. It almost sullies your entire image at a football club for me, because it's staggering beyond belief that you would put your own ego in front of results. And I do think if there's any hint of truth to that, I don't really want there to be. But if there is, then, as that question rightly said, it's irrelevant who we sign if the system isn't different, and or, you know, the players that he signs cannot play that system to the level that is needed. And honestly, like, McTominay is an upgrade on Souček a bit, but as I said,
there's a lot of players that would be an upgrade on Souček at this point in time. That's the harsh reality of it. It doesn't matter, because.
But I do think, though, if you put James Ward-Prowse in that position, not much. It gets a little bit better, but he's not the level of player needed. And other than being this leader that he supposedly is.
I mean, Mike's saying it here as well in the chat. You know, Ward-Prowse is the noble replacement 2 years too late, and I think that's the point. You know, it would have been.
I wrote an article on the West Ham way years and years and years ago, saying he should be the Noble replacement, because he is that similar sort of player. But much like Noble, if he loses possession, he's totally ineffective in terms of winning it back, because he's not quick enough, he's not strong enough, and it's very much a case of, if you don't have the exact ingredients for him to thrive, he's not really going to do much. He can lose his way during games.
I think with Moyes, just the whole point that Sam made about whether we brought in 6, 7, 8 world-class players, I think Moyes was the perfect manager to come in when he did, when we were, you know, there was only really the pressure of survival at that point, and he gets the best out of what he's got at the time, and that's what he did. He got the best out of Antonio, he got the best out of certain players, and we played to a way where teams A didn't expect it to start with, and B, it just worked because we weren't a top 6 or top 7 expected team. We weren't a team fighting in Europe. We were a team that were at the bottom of the league, and it worked because we could set up how Moyes did. Fans accepted that we weren't that good, so we'd have to play that way to get out of it. And then that's basically it. My point on Moyes is he's done an excellent job in the last 3 years. He should be absolutely applauded for what he's done. Does that mean I think he's the man to take us forward and progress this football club? No, it doesn't. So the two things can coexist. And I think there's a hint of truth to what he is saying in chat, Sam, in terms of we could sign a lot better players. We did it last summer as well. Again, there was injuries, etc. But we regressed. I mean, we regressed with better players in the squad. So for me, Moyes is not that man to take us forwards, but I can still be thankful and, you know, acknowledge what he has done for this football club is really good and you know, one of the best that we've had since we've been in the Premier League.
I think it's the old quote of his that comes back to haunt him every single window. If he wants a Red Bull model, he has to target Red Bull style players. And, you know, that is an idea. It's an ethos that someone like Steidten is key in pushing forward with. That is how he moves.
And he's implemented it before at Leverkusen.
Yeah. And yet someone who has directly quoted that image of what he wants isn't moving with it. And look, I've tweeted it out. I would love for him, and I've said it on the channel, I would love for him to turn it around, prove us all wrong, go and win the Europa League and get us to finish top 6. Of course, I'd love that, because as that comment said before, you know, you support West Ham through thick and thin. And I've supported them in the Championship. I've seen us play absolute dross. Like, it's been hard, but it's been West Ham, and I love it. But it's not something that in modern day football you can just skirt by on doing the bare minimum, in my opinion anyway, because if we lose 20 games this season, I think there's a good chance we go down. And that's something that really, if you think that adding Maguire, adding McTominay, adding James Ward-Prowse to our side is going to address the problems that we have and lower that number, I would love to hear from you, because I don't really. Maybe I need a sample of what you're smoking.
I mean, for me, it's a strange one, because again, we've signed some good players. Now, this isn't just on Moyes. This is typical of West Ham since we've, you know, had Sullivan and Gold and Brady as our owners at the time. So, especially the striker position, and that kind of segues into some more transfer news that we're going to talk about, which is Gianluca Scamacca. It looks like he's finally going to be going. He's gone to Atalanta today. He's flown to Italy to have his medical and stuff, and it looks like we're going to get around 25 million back with add-ons. So we're going to lose a little bit of money, but not too much. The whole Scamacca situation, let's kind of dissect it, because he was brought in last summer and we were sat on this channel saying this is an excellent signing. You know, he is one of the best European strikers we could have got right now, and he will score goals if we play to how he should play. What's gone wrong, and why has it not worked for Scamacca in a West Ham shirt?
We just haven't played to his strengths, and we've also kind of not done anything particularly well in terms of how we play. You know, we've mentioned Souček. We didn't drop him when he could have perhaps been dropped, and maybe after a rest on the bench he could have got back form-wise to what we've seen previously. We don't know, but there's been no competition and no progression in any area of the pitch, in my opinion. The centre mid did towards the end of the season, when Rice and Paqueta really started to get into their stride, but I don't see how anyone looks at our side. Even Bowen massively regressed, and you know, the winning goal in the final does really paper over the decline of his season. And you know, I think that's incredible. He was excellent in the final, obviously because he scored the winner, but the season as a whole was kind of glossed over, and this mishmash, and you know, it's the second time that Moyes has done this, where we've brought in a striker and just completely played against how we know they thrive. And it's quite baffling. Like, he showed at times that even if you play him in that out of his comfort zone, he will get you goals. He did against Leeds. He did against Fulham, and he can do that because he's that good. But if you play to his strengths, you could be looking at an extra 5 or 6 goals in the league. You could be looking at more. And I think when you are so ingrained into playing one system with one striker who you love, then it all falls apart, particularly when that one striker has never scored a substantial amount of goals in one season.
I think that's also what confused me a little bit last summer, and especially this summer with what Moyes is trying to target. It's the variation in the type of profile he wants. I mean, last summer it was his top 2 striker targets were Broja from Chelsea and Scamacca. They're 2 different players. They're 2 different profiles. So I'm not sure how you can then. You has to be an identity behind how you want to play and the type of player you want to fit into your system. Scamacca is a completely different type of striker to someone like Antonio or Broja. It just is. It's just a different type of player altogether. So I don't understand, especially this summer, where there's been such a kind of scattergun approach to his own wants and needs for players, because there hasn't really been that, okay, we're going to sit down, we want this type of player. There's going to be X, Y, Z players. We're going to try and get these players to fit this system. There just hasn't been that. Is that kind of how you feel as well, Slav?
Pretty much. I think the you look at the forward who we've suggested, talked about on this channel a few times, scored 2 against us today. Boniface would have perfectly suited the style that Moyes wants to play. You know, he's quick, he's tall, he's strong, and he's a solid finisher as well. He would thrive in that Moyes system. However, we're not targeting him. And I'm just going to, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh here, but I'm going to go back to Broja. And one of the things that has always really confused me about him is people are talking about him like he went to Holland and he tore it up, like he tore it up at Southampton. He didn't. He tore us apart when we played him. He didn't hit double figures for Southampton in the league. And that's the problem. We need someone who will score us 15, 20 goals if possible. But Broja's not going to do that. And, I am, of course, speaking hypothetically. I don't know. But even after his injury, which is one, if you do your cruciate and you rely on pace, it's a real struggle to get back to the level that you're at. Is that going to happen? I definitely wouldn't be spending any money apart from on a loan fee to get him in, because it's still just testing your theory. I would much rather go out and sign someone like Florian Balogun, who runs the channels, is big, strong, quick, and has hit double figures in Ligue 1 this season. I would much rather go and get him. Obviously, he's at Arsenal. That's not going to be a very easy thing to do, particularly this window. But I would much rather try and get someone like that than some of the players that we have been linked to up top. I think, as I said, for the way Moyes wants to play and the players we're linked with and they're supposedly his top targets, I just find it really baffling sometimes. It doesn't match it.
Yeah, I mean, there was reports coming out today. We don't know how true they are yet, but Dominic Solanke is a potential replacement for Scamacca. Ian's had his say already in the chat that Solanke to replace Scamacca would be ridiculous. Even Ballon Dawson here saying about Scamacca, played well when he was fit. He was injured for half a season. Have we considered maybe he just hasn't settled in England? E. Davis again, Scamacca is great. Bad season of injuries and also a manager who failed him. Mike here, the refusal to use Fornals at 8 prevented us breaking teams down and providing Paqueta the opportunity to roam between the lines as needed to drop so play can be connected. Absolutely. And yeah, it's just kind of, and I mean, another one from Sam saying Moyes works on the law of averages, chooses to do the same thing over and over with the hope it will finally pay off. Quality strikers like Scamacca and Haller don't and won't feed off of hoofball. I think I agree with that. I think the way Moyes plays, he looks for opportunities to, Mike said it many times, we play in moments as West Ham. The most dangerous we've looked in pre-season really is from set pieces and little bits, nothing really, building up patterns of play. And we saw that last season as well. A lot of our goals came from either set pieces or just moments of brilliance, if you will. So, yeah, I think Scamacca leaving is kind of, is a bit sour, really, because he had the potential to be a proper West Ham striker, you know, that Italian striker we wanted. So for me, it's frustrating that it hasn't worked. It's another striker to add to the big list since we've been under ownership of David Sullivan. So it's not just a Moyes issue. It's been an issue since Sullivan was in charge. So I think that's also a key note, not to place all of the blame on David Moyes. But yeah.
One thing I would say quickly about Scamacca, just before we move on, is that, you know, he's a guy who's had the club he supports linked with him, and, you know, they very publicly tried to unsettle him. He didn't once come out and say anything, you know, I want to leave. He wasn't unprofessional. He did give some interviews and say, you know, they're my club and I would be open to it. But he never once disrespected West Ham. And he didn't disrespect Moyes in any way. We all know that, you know, it's not worked out for him under Moyes. And Moyes has basically thrown the guy under the bus in the terms of how he played. He didn't try and assimilate to his proven style, but he's gone about it professionally. And in comparison to a supposed club legend in Cresswell, I think it's an absolute embarrassment. You know, this guy.
Let's talk about that, because that was on the list of things to talk about around transfers, because there's been a lot of talk about, you know, who we're going to sign. We need to sign these players, etc. Cresswell is sat there right now, hasn't trained in over a week, refused to go. Well, it's all allegedly, but it looks like he's, you know, refused to go out there to Germany today. It looks like he's trying to force the move through to Wolves. It's kind of crazy because he's been
to the player dinner last.
I don't think he was at the player. No, I don't think he was at the player dinner. Him and Scamacca weren't there. So it seems a little bit strange how that's gone, because Cresswell's been here since 2014. This year would have been his testimonial year. You could see how much the trophy lift meant to him and winning the Conference League last year. Why is he now? I mean, why has it got to this point where he's trying to force a move through? Is it an issue on our part not accepting a bid that's a decent amount for Cresswell at this stage of his career? Is it the way we're handling it, or do you know, under any circumstance, you don't do that as a professional?
I don't think you do it as a professional, especially look, that people go, or if you were getting offered more money at your job and, you know, someone else came in for you and they had a longer contract, all these things that we're hearing about Cresswell. Look, football's a totally different career. It's totally different in terms of money. However, the way you do things across your career is what people will remember you for, and you will have to live with that for the rest of your life. You know, in my opinion, he's completely sullied his image here at West Ham. I think it's pathetic. You know, to not even go to the dinner. If you don't want to train, if you don't want to be involved in terms of, you know, you're making a very clear message to the club, fair enough. I think there's a way to do it. I wouldn't do that. I'd still train, but I would be very vocal to the owners and to Moyes that I want to go. Look, they've offered me a longer contract, and maybe there's some family reason that I want to move up north because we know he's from that area. Mm-hmm. But to just completely disregard the fan base, to ignore what the club has done for you and throw your toys out the pram, I think it's pathetic. It's embarrassing. He should be ashamed of himself. He's not going to be, because if he gets a move, then it's all worked out for him. Mm-hmm. But I really do have a problem with people who say, oh, you know, this sort of money is you can't turn it down. Well, you can't turn it down because you don't live in that footballer's world where you're getting paid this sort of money. It's totally different plane of existence. And if you are so petty and, you know, I'm going to say pathetic. If you're that pathetic that you're willing to disregard everything you've done, everything the club's done, and the money you're being paid just so you can move away and not play football, make a very public image of it, I don't care. I want him gone, to be honest.
I'll tell you what as well, you compare him to someone that did move to Wolves in January, Craig Dawson. that man wanted to leave the summer before. He wanted to go to Wolves. He wanted to go up north to be with his family. I don't think any West Ham fan begrudged him of the reasons for why he wanted to move. And you know, West Ham fans were thankful for him because he always did try his best in a West Ham shirt. Never ever did anything out of the ordinary. And even when we denied him the move up to Wolves in the summer, he stayed until January and he played and, you know, performed as you'd expect Craig Dawson to do. So for me, it's just crazy. It's just crazy that Cresswell's doing this. Do I think that he's a little bit frustrated? Yes, because like Mike has just said in the chat, Cresswell signed the kind of extension so we could then get a fee for him, which I probably agree with. And now, you know, he's trying to force through the move. But even if you're trying to force through a move, you don't do what you don't not turn up for your job. As much as you want to get the move, you're under contract at West Ham. You still play until until we accept the offer. So for me, it's a strange one. I don't agree with it at all. I'm in kind of the same boat as you, Stoff. I don't think it's fair to do that, and it's put a real tint on what he has done over the last 10 years at West Ham, which has been majorly very good. So yeah, it's a strange one. It'll be interesting to see if that move does go through. And if it doesn't, how does he then come back into this dressing room and into this team? And how do the fans feel about that? Because someone that did that recently, Marko Arnautovic, you know, he wanted to go to China. Do you remember in January? And then he did this video message after we lost saying, "I'm back." And everyone was like, "Back from where? You haven't gone anywhere, mate." So what's Cresswell going to do?
But Arnautovic was a great footballer. You know, he had pace, he had strength, and he is everything that Cresswell isn't. Cresswell doesn't start for any other side competing for top 10, in my opinion. You know, people might go, well, Wolves are looking to do that. They're not. Wolves are in a hole at the moment. They are struggling. And, you know, if they manage to get top 10, it will be a fantastic job for them. They're in a tough situation. And I think that if he were to come back, personally, he shouldn't be anywhere near a starting 11. I don't think he's good enough. He hasn't been for about 2 or 3 years. If he were to come on as a substitute, I'd probably boo him for the first game. You know, I'm a big supporter of kind of getting behind players when they start for you. I would boo him when he came on. But, of course, after that, you get behind your side, you support them. I do think it's really unprofessional. And
look what Snazzy said here, Stuff. You know, if he goes to Wolves and comes back to West Ham, I hope he gets booed out of the stadium. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of thing that he'd be in for. But as I said, we really should be selling these kinds of players, and I think he's easily upgradable. If he doesn't move, I'd be very disappointed. I would expect Cresswell to be in the reserves or, you know, on the bench for a long time, unless Emerson gets injured. But yeah, I would boo him the first game, in my opinion. I think he's been that bad.
Just a quick diversion, some sort of breaking news-ish. Fabrizio Romano's just tweeted that West Ham have just sent their first official bid for Alvarez, a package of around £30 million. And negotiations are continuing, and Edson Alvarez is ready to fly for a medical any moment once it's agreed. So 30 million looks like the first package. Whether that'll be enough to get it done, we'll find out. It might have to go up to maybe 35 million, but it looks like that deal's getting closer. So it's a little bit of a positive. It'll be interesting to see how that progresses over the next couple of days. I mean, David's saying, I miss Big Craig so much. We all miss Big Craig so much, don't worry. Thunder and Joy saying he didn't think Cresswell would do this. I'm done with him. Mr. Doofus 58 saying only thing to say Moyes out and take the poison dwarf with you. I think we all know who he's talking about. And Alex Chapman's put Brighton sign Kudus. No chance they'll sell Alvarez now. Well, it looks like that might be happening as well.
Yeah, no, Ajax will sell. They'll get money in. They'll sign someone else. They've got a good young pipeline coming through, particularly in that central defensive mid area. So I think they'll happily take a big profit on him and, you know, say thank you very much and and move on. That's what Ajax do normally.
Question for you here, Sloth. Say we bring in Alvarez, we sort out the 8 position, which looks like the kind of 2 main positions we want to focus on before any others. With Scamacca going, would you then go for a striker next, or is there another position you think we should be strengthening before that? Do you think that Antonio Ings Mubama is enough to go into the Premier League season with?
I don't think Antonio's good enough. I've said it for a while. You know, I think he's unplayable on his day. But if you look at it again and again, season after season, we need a striker who is going to get us 15 to 20 goals, not 10. And
yeah,
I don't want to be too mean about him, but I just don't think he's good enough, again, to be leading the line for any other team chasing top 10. If you had him off the bench, fair enough. That's a really, really damaging substitution. Yeah. But again, I don't think he starts for anyone in that top 10, anyone chasing Europe. And some of the comments he made towards the back end of the season, I would be looking to shift him along as well. I don't feel confident with him being our focal point next season.
On that stuff, who would you start then against Bournemouth? Because it's between Antonio, Ings, Mubama. I mean, Mubama started today and Antonio came on at half time. Who starts? Because for me, without Antonio, we just collapse as a system. We don't work near enough effectively as we can. And as frustrating as Antonio can be, I think he is very important to how Moyes wants to play. So who starts as striker in a week's time for you?
He is important as to how Moyes plays, but there are many, many forwards out there who are a massive upgrade on him. Even Nzola, who's playing and, rumored to be about 15 million for Spezia, he's a big upgrade. He's very similar in his playing style, but he's quicker. He's a much better finisher. I do think that if we don't get anyone in, I kind of think you have to start Antonio just because Moyes is so set on a certain way of playing. But I think if we start the season with Antonio, I think we're going to be in serious trouble. And I would love to be wrong, but I just think, again, he's a guy who's not hit 15 goals for us in the Premier League. He's not a good enough striker, in my opinion.
What's your thoughts on the links to Solanke? Do you think that would be a good signing, or do you think we should just stay clear of Solanke?
I think if we were getting rid of Ings and Antonio and we had another forward lined up, I think it's a fine move. For the sort of money that Bournemouth will be asking, I think it's a stupid move. I think the sky was the limit for him at one point, and it kind of, I don't know if it was his work ethic or maybe application in other areas, but he really dropped off. And I just, again, I don't think it can you honestly ever see Dominic Solanke scoring 15 goals in the Premier League?
I agree with you. I would not be bringing Solanke in unless it's a replacement for someone like Danny Ings as the backup striker. It shouldn't be the player to come in. I think the one for me that I think we should try and get is Balogun. But for me, that's a very tough deal to make because of, again, being at Arsenal, they're going to demand, they're demanding, 45 to 50 million for him, which is crazy numbers. And we know that because of how we dealt with Rice with them, they're just going to be stingy as well. So, I
think the reality with Balogun is that no one pays that. Inter Milan won't pay that. They won't. And you have to almost look at a loan before. I think he will leave on loan. If he came to West Ham on loan, there would be no option to buy. I think they would be hoping we play him. And I think there would be like a Chelsea style system where if we don't play him, we get fined. Yeah. For me, I'm happy with that because I think he should be starting ahead of any of the forwards that we have, apart from Mubama, but Mubama's not really been proven. But I do think I'd be giving him the reins and saying, look, you're going to be our number one man. Mubama's going to be coming on for you at times. However, show us what you've got. Show us that you can hit, the similar numbers that you did in France do it in the Premier League. And that's what Arsenal would be saying, because if he does, then he's worth 50 million. But he's definitely not worth that off one good season in France, as much as I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I mean, just to stop you there, it looks like we've got another guest coming onto the channel, a regular guest, should we say. You all know him probably already in the chat. So say hello to James from E20 Zone. How you doing, mate?
My Saturday's going all right, but West Ham as a whole, let's be honest. But sorry I'm late, gents. I had to do something on my own thing, but yeah, it's not good today, is it? Let's be real.
No worries at all, mate. Yeah, everyone, go check him out if you haven't already. You probably know who he is. We'll leave his link in the description as well. But yeah, we're just talking about the striker situation. The rumours that Solanke could be replacing Scamacca. What's your thoughts on Solanke, James?
Not good, is it, lads? Let's be honest. Like, I'm not being funny. How can we go from winning something and now we're struggling about to get players? Like, it's just like it feels like you wouldn't think West Ham just won a trophy 2.5 months ago. You know what I'm saying? And that's the worrying sign. Now, when you say Dominic Solanke, you think Liverpool reject. Like, he went to Bournemouth. He's had a bit of he's done all right at Bournemouth, but is Bournemouth his level? Really? Like, do you know what I'm saying? And it's not me being negative on him, but I've got to be honest. West Ham should be looking better than him. Yeah, we should. And like, if you want to go out and go and get a striker, then obviously it has to work around the manager, who's under fire at the minute, big time, and he shouldn't be here. But it is what it is, and I don't know with Solanke, mate. I really don't. It is what it is at the end of the day. I think we're all just tired of it, really. I think what we need as fans, me personally, I speak for myself, so I can't speak for everyone else. We need to see bodies at the club. Like, we need to see someone come in and relight the West Ham fire. Because at the minute we're just fading away a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to stay as positive as we can, but it's difficult because there's just been so much to try and be to be negative about, and the performance today was shambolic, and it kind of encapsulated the issues that are going on outside of the club, and it kind of transfers onto the pitch. So I mean, there's a lot of issues. It looks like Alvarez could be the first one to come in, and then obviously we're going to try and get another midfielder to play alongside him with Paqueta. If we got those 2 deals done, James, what would be the position that you'd want to try and sign next? What's the key area? Is it striker because Scamacca's gone?
I think me personally, I think we need a striker. I think you're putting a lot of pressure on Bamba to come in and hit the ground running in the Premier League. Like, let's be honest, I want him to do well, that kid. I really do. 18 years old, he's an academy boy. Nothing would give me greater pleasure for that lad to go and score loads and loads of goals. But can you rely on him? That's the $1 million question. I don't think we can at the minute. I think he should be a luxury rather than someone who's coming in and like hoping that he's going to score the goals. So I think a striker's major for us, really. We definitely need a left back at the club. We've got one of our left backs doesn't want to train or be here, which is mad. And then so we definitely need a left back at the club. We've got a lot of problems. Like, what I need West Ham to do on my personal side of things is I want them to do something in the next sort of 72 hours to come out and go, right, we've got this man, we're going after this man, and come the Bournemouth game, we could have maybe one person in the door and maybe 2 on the way, and it looks better then, rather than it just how it looks now. It just looks bad. Really bad.
I mean, we just mentioned it, James, that Fabrizio just reported that we've bid 30 million for Alvarez and it's getting closer. So that should hopefully be done in the next few days if we don't bollocks it up again.
Well, it's Sullivan pays the agent's fees, mate. That's what I'm saying. Because if we don't, then that won't be good.
But yeah, I mean, the whole kind of match today, kind of we saw what Tim Steidten can do if he's given a chance to do it. And Mike's put an interesting, question in here. Do you support Moyes under this pressure right now, or do you, kind of go all in with what Tim Steidten could potentially do for this football club? Like, what if you had to pick between Tim Steidten and Moyes right now? Who are you guys picking going into the season?
You just seen Tim Steidten today. That Leverkusen team is his, and that's the one where we spent all them players. Do you know what I mean? Don't forget me wrong. Alonso's there; he's the manager. But Steiden's found a few of them talented players there for him. Do you know what I mean? I think we've got a problem at West Ham, which is quite big. And you've got a man who will find talent all around the world. And you've got Moyes, who's very stubborn in what sort of players he wants. And really, me personally, Moyes does not fit the Steidten model. And he need you've either got to get rid of one, right? You either get rid of Moyes or you get rid of Steidten. Like they just can't work together. I don't believe they can. So if I had a choice, I'd go with Steidten. I think Steidten will. I don't think he'll let you down. I think he knows what he's doing.
Sloth, what would you pick?
Well, the other thing that I would say about Steidten is that he was also key in the appointment of Alonso for them. So, you know, it's one of those things. He clearly has an eye for a manager as well as a player. For me, I would be putting all my eggs in the Steidten basket. I would give Moyes a bit of time. I'd give him the start of the season. But I would literally say to him, look, you got 5 games. If after 5 games we've not got at least 2 wins on the board, I'm afraid it's endgame. And, you know, we're going to get someone in and we're going to be looking for it because I just find it baffling the targets that Moyes is supposedly after in comparison to everything he says in terms of we want a Red Bull model. I know that's an outdated quote, but, you know, in comparison to what he wants, Steidten should be the ideal person to work with. But we just hear noise after noise that he's not happy. And, you know, I mentioned it before, but apparently that he wouldn't even play some of the targets if they were signed. And to me, if that is the case, you know, I would sack him. But I'm fully behind Steidten. I think he is the better option of the two to take us forward long term.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a difficult one because we're a week away from the season starting. So I think it really depends on who he'd bring in. I don't trust David Sullivan as far as I can throw him to bring a good manager in. So that's my biggest reservation. If you let Tim Steidten handle it and let him, you know, advise on who we should be bringing in to replace Moyes, sure, that would put my mind at rest a little bit more. But if it's going to be a Sullivan appointment, then no. I think we're not going to get Moyes sacked. It's not going to happen unless we're absolutely rock bottom after the first 4 or 5 games.
Well, it is, Frankie. Yeah, and I'm going to say this. Yeah, I look at it with Sullivan that he's had every opportunity to let Moyes go over the summer. Right, he had the chance to let him go straight after the final. He come out and talk sport, sold our player, and made sure that Moyes is the manager. Right, and said, right, he's going to be here for as long as he wants to be here. The problem is, this is my personal opinion, yeah, Sullivan doesn't want to lose face. He doesn't. So, because he has to have an excuse to sack Moyes. He's got no excuse at the minute, right? He can't go and sack Moyes right now, right? Because he'll make him look bad. Yeah. That's what I personally think. It makes him look bad, yeah? And in the media, make him look bad. How can you go and sack a manager who's just won you a trophy at the start of the season and things like that, yeah? If Moyes starts bad, he's got every excuse then to sack him, which I think, like, if you was a good owner, you'd have just let him go with a mutual agreement and said, listen, Dave, David Moyes, you've done us well. Last season, the Prem weren't good. You've won us a trophy. You bail out. You're going to go up to another club with a better opportunity, yeah, or another club. Right, you're going to get another job quite quick because you just won something. And we're going to go in a different direction. And that would have been the right way of doing things. The way the way it is at the minute, Sullivan won't do that because he looks bad on it. He looks bad on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And people have had their say. So Richard saying Tim, obviously, he followed up with, well, unless you're insane. I mean, Paul said today's match answered that one. Moyes out. Epic Hashtime said Moyes will end up becoming Everton manager before the season is over. Could well happen. And yeah, it's just Tim wants what's good for the club. And you know, young and investment. I totally agree with that as well. And yeah, I mean, Mike's put an interesting thing. What do you think about this one, guys? Sullivan won't be picking the manager for the next board. It's all on Tim and Nobes to find the manager. Do you think that would happen if, you know, not if it happened now, but if Moyes did get sacked at some point in this season? Do you think Sullivan would be able to kind of relinquish some of that, you know, hands-on approach and let them pick? Because I don't think he would. I don't think he would until he's gone.
I think the tough thing for Sullivan would be giving up the control. But I do think if he's got any sort of common sense at all, he has to look at the Czech investor, Kwitsinski. He has to look at people like Trip Smith. And if they're saying, look, we want to get you bang for buck. We want to get you the most value from a potential buyer as possible so that when you do sell up, which we know is probably going to be in the next couple of years, when we own the ground and when all of it's sorted, that's going to be when we're at our most valuable. But we have to be in the Premier League. And most importantly as well, we have to be challenging for European spots. People don't quite put the importance of that into this sort of decision, because that's a 300 million pound difference in valuation. If you're continually competing for those spots, you're making yourselves far more valuable. And I do think if we've got Tim and Noble there, then Noble knows the club inside out. He is going to know exactly what sort of manager we need. And if he can bring in someone with Steidten, I think that's the best way to go about it. If Trip Smith and Krasinski are sat there saying, we need new direction, we need someone else, and we're going to find them, we'll do the negotiating with Steidten and with Noble, this is on us. I think he would quite happily take a seat back, because then if it goes tits up, he can come out to TalkSport and he can go, I put the future of the club in the hands of other people and it all went wrong. Woe is me. And, you know, he can play that role, the pantomime villain, and he will love it. But it's just a case of him taking that step back. I do think he'll do it because there's potentially 200 or 300 million extra for him on the line, but it's just about how can they sell us. I think that's what goes back to E20's point about just getting bodies in. If we get some quality players in, we make ourselves far more attractive to any other manager out there. If we get, say, Trafford, someone like Harwood Bellis, Chalobah even, or you know, a quality centre mid like Fofana, then you get the interest of people outside
But wouldn't you say though, Slough, that West Ham would have been a bit of a better proposition right now going into a new season, rather than, how can I put it, if this season doesn't go right and we end up finishing the bottom half, no Europe and all that, then we've got to reset and basically start again from scratch, if that makes sense. Instead of taking Moyes out of the equation in the summer, bringing a new manager in and saying, right, this is the plan, this is what we want to sustain.
I completely agree with you there, but the problem is the structure at the club. And, you know, we came into the summer, we knew we were going to sell Rice. What we should have done is gone straight out, got deals for replacements sorted. And even if we have this scattergun approach, which we know we all do, have 5 or 6 players lined up, get the best deal possible lined up and sign them, get those bodies through the door, and then sell Rice. Now, I know people will go, oh, but you can't sign someone before you've sold them. No, you can. That is exactly what you do. It's not like moving house. It's an analogy that I've seen. You know, it's a case of you have a player, you have value there, and just because you've signed 2 or 3 players, it doesn't mean they lose any value at all. There's always going to be a difference there. If it means 10 or 15 million knocked off the value, you have to take that on the chin, because you know you've basically promised the player they can leave. You've got a trophy and you have to think, going forward, this is going to build us stronger. So personally, I would have gone into the summer, if Moyes had all these targets lined up, go straight for them, get them signed up, get deals in place, and you either stick with Moyes or you say to him, thanks, but no thanks, and you have these targets lined up anyway.
Back to your point, James, about Sullivan won't want to get rid of Moyes because it will look terrible. What do you think would look worse if Steidten was actually the one to go? You know, because E. Davis puts a point here. If Steidten goes, that looks so much worse than if Moyes does. What do you think's a worse situation for Sullivan?
I think what it is that some of the Moyes in people, and I've got one of the lads on the channel who's a major Moyes in person in West Ham Online. Yeah,
I've seen him.
But I think with Steidten, if he goes, then I don't think he's going on his own accord. I think he's going because he's looking at it sort of like, what else can I do here? They've got a plan. The problem is, right, Moyes it's the 1 year thing with Moyes, the 1 year contract. That's the thing what's given a lot of grief. Now, if Moyes was given, just say that for argument's sake, if Moyes would have been given an extra 1 year extension on top of his current contract, so you've had 2 years, then he could have worked with Steidten sort of target, so to speak, because then he would have had a long-term plan. At the minute, the targets that Moyes is going for is trying to save his job, basically, in a roundabout way. He's trying to bring people in that he knows that will hit the ground running and don't flop. Because if West Ham have a bad season this season in the Premier League, then Moyes is out of a job. So, listen, I've always said since Leicester last year that I think Moyes needs to go. I think it's time for a little change at West Ham. I think it's got a bit stale. I think Moyes and West Ham might have hit a road where they can't go any higher. Now he's won the conference, he can't take us any higher, in my opinion. Right? I think a younger manager with a better philosophy, better style of play, might take us, springboard us onto a sort of another level, hopefully. But in with Steidten, you've only got to look at Leverkusen today. Look how slick they were. Look at how organised they were. And people will say about Alonso, but Alonso only sort of manages them players. Steiden's the one who brought in players to the club and found all in players all over Europe. So, yeah, I agree with what the comment, what someone just said. But really, Moyes shouldn't be here, mate. He should have been gone after the final. I think we all know it.
I think the biggest thing was that Moyes was not backed after winning a trophy with a contract extension. If he was really the long-term future of this football club and he's really what Sullivan believed in, he would have been given a contract after winning us a trophy. He wasn't, and now he's kind of in a position, like you mentioned, he's got 1 year left, and he's trying to sign players who he thinks, in his judgment, is the best right now to kind of springboard us up a little bit. And in the short term of his year left, we'll get him through the job. That's how he sees it. He doesn't see past this year for West Ham fans. We have to deal with it. You know, we're the ones that are going to be here after Moyes goes.
Let me just ask you both a question as well, because I've been thinking of this for a little while. But if Moyes had been sacked, or if he had left the club, or if he leaves after the first 5-10 games, whatever, does he walk into another job? Because in my opinion, I don't think any other club touches him. 20 losses in the league last year. I don't think there's a way that anyone looks at that and goes, we need that man in the club. Everton definitely don't. And I know people were saying about him going back to Everton, but the last thing you'd want to do if you're Everton Football Club is risk that amount of losses going into a season, going into the long term, particularly when Dyche is, probably that bit more proven to be working with a budget and keeping a team in the league with the bare minimum resources as well.
James, how do you feel? I'll touch on that after.
I'll let you go first on that one.
Well, I was going to say with Moyes, if he gets sacked this season, he won't be getting a new job. He won't be getting a top job unless it's something like come in and try and save us from relegation. That's the type of job it will be. That it won't be a project. It won't be something exciting like he's got now. It won't be a European club. It will either be back in Scotland or it will be a Premier League team that have sacked their manager because they're struggling. That's what I think it will be. I don't think he'll ever get a chance to be in the platform he is right now and to work with someone like Tim Steidten again. So why on earth he isn't collaborating? I mean, it's alleged stuff, but it looks like they're conflicting with what they want at the club. I don't understand it. I think he's happy with the trophy that he's got. Do I think he believes that we'll win the Europa League this season? No. Do I think he thinks we can finish in the top 7 this season? No. Which is why him and Sullivan are just seeing out his contract, and it saves Sullivan the money, and it saves Moyes the courtesy of being sacked. That's how I view it.
But we say it saves him money. It's if the difference between finishing 16th and then finishing 8th is massive in terms of money. It's multi-millions of pounds, and I think when we talk about he wants to save himself some money, I think that's it's a half truth, because there's so much money to be made from investing in your future and bringing in the right person, building the kind of project that we have, and progressing forward. In football, there's only more money in progress.
Yeah, I agree, but Sullivan's never done that with a manager. You look at who he's appointed at West Ham; they've always been available as free agents. He's never gone out and got a manager out of his post and brought him to West Ham. He's never paid that package. He's not going to do that now when he's near the exit of the club.
Yeah, and the thing is, he ain't going to put loads of money into the club when he knows he's going to sell it, right? Either, like.
But Krasinski will do that. I think that's why I think Krasinski and Trip Smith would probably go, look, you're on the way out, mate. If you want to go, or if you want us to take this on the chin, let's be realistic. It's probably a £30 million investment.
But you know what, though? I'm going to be honest. I don't think Sullivan. I think Sullivan's still going to be a part of West Ham, but I don't think he's going to be the majority shareholder. Like, I think he's that power driven. He isn't going to walk away from an asset. Like, I want Sullivan gone. I do. Like, that's me personally, yeah. But in regards of West Ham ownership, I think Kadinsky would just take his shares, and Sullivan would just have less shares in West Ham. So if the final say is basically with Kadinsky, then do you know what I'm saying?
I think it depends on what Sullivan has next lined up, because he's always said after West Ham he wants to go back to Cardiff. He wants to go back to his boyhood town and be in charge of that. So if he takes over Cardiff, I can't see him really sticking around much at West Ham, and I don't think people coming in will want him sticking around. So I think he might be forced to sell.
I believe so and all, mate. Like, I done a space the other day on Twitter, and a bloke I know, he's used to be an ex-football agent, come on there and he was speaking about Sullivan, and he said about Cardiff that he's obsessed with Cardiff. Yeah. Like he's not a West Ham fan, David Sullivan, and like David Gold was the only West Ham fan out of all of them. Do you know what I mean? And it's a shame. It's a shame. Like with how it's gone with the owners. Do you know what I'm saying? But they need to go now. It's time for a fresh start, fresh outlook, and fresh sort of way of thinking of it. Your question previous about Moyes in the Premier League, I will say this: West Ham will be the final job he gets in the Premier League, because it's the best job he's ever going to have. Like, I don't see him going anywhere else. I don't see him going to Crystal Palace or like Luton or somewhere like that. I think West Ham, when you look at West Ham as a whole, big club in London, because we are a big club, and when people say we're not, well, we are. Like, we proved it after the day after we won the trophy, like the parade that we had and the amount of people on the streets of East London. So I don't think Moyes will get another job in the Prem. I really don't. Like, I think he'll be a sort of manager that will go into a club like Leeds, so to speak, in the Championship, and bring someone up into the Prem. But right now, currently, I don't see there's a slot where people will go, David Moyes is the man. Like, I really don't. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it also depends with how things line up. Your Moyes might get sacked a week after or a week before someone else gets sacked in the Premier League, and then they might be desperate at that point. They might think, okay, David Moyes, Premier League proven, got the experience. Can you come in? We're going to give you this set amount of money.
I think it all goes back to what you expect from West Ham. Like, for me, like, I think expectation is a big thing with West Ham fans. Like, some fans expect West Ham to be consistently challenging for Europe each year. Yeah, I expect West Ham, for me personally, top 10 finish. I think that's not really without the realms of possibility, considering the fan base we've got, the finances that we do have, and basically the teams that are in the Premier League. I think we can seriously get into the top 10. I'm not saying Europe, because I think we discussed it the other week. It's just not sustainable for West Ham. Unless you're going to pump money into it yearly, it's just not going to happen. So it's a big question, it's expectation.
I think that's what makes West Ham a really interesting club right now. From a neutral point of view as well, probably looking outside into the club. We are a very big club in terms of the fan base we have. We're a massive attraction in London. It looks like we just need that final push of new ownership to kind of really transform this club into one of those big ones. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, I don't hate to say it, but Spurs, they were the ones to do it, that kind of broke into that top 5 mold and became part of the top 6 just by, the way they went about it and, making smart appointments and making smart signings. So there is room to do it. Aston Villa are trying to do it at the moment. Brighton are another team trying to do it with European football. We did it a couple of seasons ago. I mean, we were very close to finishing in the top 4. I mean, that was 2 seasons ago now. It's not that long ago, and it's not out of the realms of possibility. It seemed difficult at this stage just because of our lack of activity, the uncertainty around the ownership, the uncertainty around Moyes, the negative approach from Moyes, the issues everyone has with how we're going to move forwards. But the club as a whole, it is there to be taken, and it is there to be taken up, which is why I get frustrated that we're kind of sitting on Moyes' perils a little bit too much, and we might miss out on what could be a really crucial year, because back to your point, James, next year we probably won't have European football. We won't be this proposition that could potentially be more attractive this summer.
Well, I think if we miss out on European football, it's a disaster. I think Paqueta will leave. Like it's one of those things where you can't afford to stand still in football. And if we did look, we lose Scamacca. If we don't improve upon Scamacca, get someone who suits our system, and in no universe is Dominic Solanke an improvement on Scamacca. If we don't get someone who suits our systems, is big, strong, and quick, then we are going to be moving backwards because our goals will dry up. And as I've said many times, and I hate hammering it home, but Antonio's not a goal scorer. He'll get you 10 and that'll be it. But we can't rely on that in terms of the Premier League. It's just not good enough. And he was kind of covered by Bowen, having a fantastic season previously. But again, last season, the goals kind of, they weren't coming and we struggled. We lost 20 games. If we have anything similar to that this season, it's going to be hard. And it's going to be one where if we really underperform and we finish like we did in the league last season, then we are going to be losing the likes of Paqueta. We're going to be losing the likes of Zuma. And it's going to be an even bigger challenge going forward.
Yeah. Just before we wrap up this show, lads, it's been a long one. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. And you can get involved in the comments with this question as well. Out of 10, how confident are you going into this Premier League season? Give me a number. And in the comments, let me know your numbers as well.
Oh, Frankie, you done me, mate, this Saturday night. Confident in what way, Frankie?
Just everything for the season, for what Moyes could do with the signings still yet to go this month. Just everything right now. You're confident.
I think I'm at about 3 at the minute. I that's not even me sort of being over the top. How can I put this? With Moyes, it all depends on the signings. The signings need to galvanise the squad, right? Because the squad needs an injection of life, basically. Yeah. As fans, if we look at it, September the 1st, and we've signed 4 or 5 players, by September the 1st, I mean, like not on September the 1st, mind, then we might be all right. We might be able to enjoy a good season and have a decent European run, so to speak, At the minute, I'm very, very nervous because this could go wrong very, very fast and we could be fighting uphill by the end of August. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We've got 4 big games in August, We've got Bournemouth, Chelsea, Brighton and Luton. Now, at the minute, I don't see us winning a game at the minute. That's not even me like being negative. I'm looking at them and thinking, like Luton on a Friday night, their first home game, people think we're just going to walk in there and roll them out the ground. And nothing would surprise me. It'd be just typical West Ham to go there and not do it. Do you know what I mean? It's just, you know how it is. But then it wouldn't surprise me if West Ham do that and then go and put in a decent performance against Man City or Liverpool or someone. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So you got the other side of the coin. So I'm going to say a 3 at the minute. West Ham need to give something back to the fans. Like forget the team, but the club itself have to give the fans something to shout about, and they haven't at the minute. So
out of 10, where are you at?
I'm going to be slightly more optimistic and say a 5. I do think that it's a very fine tipping point, and if we get 4 or 5 quality players in, I do expect us to go for a few loans, and I think if we do that, then we could really push on. But I just think it's a case of if we don't sign quality players, if we sign the likes of James Ward-Prowse, if we sign the likes that we overpay for people like Maguire, I think we'll just be taking a step back. Mm-hmm. And it's a big gamble. We also have Europa League, and I think if we don't buck up our ideas, have some squad depth and quality squad depth, that's the difference. I hate saying it, but last season I said Downs wasn't really good enough to come in and make a difference. I still believe that, as much as I would like him to. Mm-hmm. West Ham boy, come in and really fight for the club. I would love that. But we need quality players. And if we're going to do anything on any side of the league or the Europa League, we need that quality in depth as well. Mm-hmm. So I think if we make those signings, we could do that. but I'm about a 5 at the moment. I'm very 50-50.
Yeah, no, I was in a similar position. I'd probably be around 5.5 to 6, just because I think we will make the activity. I think we have the money there, we have the funds. It's just up to us to now do it. I think Tim Steidten's going to be able to bring in a couple of really good signings between now and the end of the window that could make a big difference in the long run of this European campaign that we're going to be on as well. And I think, it's hard to call at the moment. It really feels like a 50-50, which is why I'm kind of in the middle as well. But let's take a look at some of the comments of what you guys think. Asley, he says he's a 4. Carl Stokes a 2. Leon a 7, pretty high up. Ralph enjoying the sun but not the football. He's a 1. Exponential Anger 3. Mark 6. Doofus 3. Smith 7. Andrew 2. Johnny 3. Tony -10. I mean, I didn't know that was on the scale, but fair play. Paul 2. Richard 4. Mac 3. And Davis 0.5. So a bit of a mix there with what we kind of saw. I think that's what it is at the moment. It's just a mix of emotions being a West Ham fan. And, there's so much conflicting information. And it seems like there's about 5 new reports every day around transfers, around off-field issues, around different stuff on the pitch. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I keep saying it every week, but let's see how this week goes. Let's see what happens at this football club before we take on Bournemouth. So, lads, any final words before we wrap up the show?
Thanks for having me on. That's the first thing. Just keep the faith. Shout out to Mike, who's just had a newborn also. Congratulations to him from me and all the boys on E20. Busy week next week, mate, let's be honest, and we've got to make sure that we have some signings in. Us fans need something, and we need it sharpish. But smash a like on the like button for the boys, Elton Matt.
So, any final word?
All I can say is I know Mike was watching it with his little one today, and what a taste of West Ham to come. A 4-0 defeat. That's about in line with what I think we can all expect. But no, I think it's going to be a season of ups and downs. I do think we this week is going to be big. I can see us really pushing for players, and if that goes well, I think we'll have a good season. I'll say it quietly, but I think get behind the side when they turn up. I am Moyes out, but I would love for him to turn it around and prove me wrong. So let's all have that same attitude. Hopefully we push on in Europe as well and get a few away days out of it. But apart from that, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to end on. Remember, we've still got European football this season, still plenty of excitement potentially to come. And you just never know. We might go one further than we did when we got to the semi-final and do the unthinkable and win the Europa League and go into the Champions League. I mean, that would just be hilarious, wouldn't it? But we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we'll have a signing or two before the Bournemouth game. Thank you all for tuning into the live stream. Again, this is the biggest stream we've had in terms of numbers. So thank you very much for your support. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for future content, and go check out James on E20 Zone TV for more West Ham content. And he's live pretty much every day. So go check him out. He's putting in the graft along with us. So that's it for today, lads. We'll probably do another live stream in a couple of weeks when we've signed 4 or 5 amazing players, and we're sitting pretty after a few wins in the league. That's going to be it for today. Lads, one thing for us left to say, and that is
come on, you Lions.